The church was suffocating, the air thick with the scent of lilies and grief. I stood at the edge of the pew, my hands trembling as I clutched the funeral program, my sister Clara's face smiling back at me from the glossy paper. Then, slipped under my palm by a stranger's fleeting touch, came the note that shattered everything. I'm alive. Don't trust the will they're reading today. My knees buckled, and I gripped the pew to steady myself. Clara, my vibrant, reckless, infuriatingly perfect sister, was dead, or so I'd been told. The car accident had been brutal, the police report clinical. Her sedan crumpled against a tree, no survivors. Yet here was this scrap of paper, scrawled in her unmistakable loopy handwriting, claiming she was alive. I scanned the crowded church, the mourners' faces blurred through my tears. Who had passed me this note? And why now, as the priest droned on about eternal rest? My brother-in-law, David, sat in the front row, his head bowed, his broad shoulders shaking. He'd been a wreck since the accident, or so he claimed, calling me nightly to sob about Clara's loss. I'd always envied their marriage, Clara's wild spirit tamed by David's steady pragmatism. But the note burned in my hand, whispering betrayal. If Clara was alive, why hadn't she told me? And what was wrong with the will? The service ended, and the crowd shuffled toward the reception hall. I slipped the note into my pocket, my heart racing. David approached, his eyes red-rimmed but oddly sharp. "Lila," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk about the will. It's complicated." My stomach twisted. The note had warned me not to trust it, but David's tone carried an edge I didn't recognize. I nodded, forcing a smile, and followed him into the hall, where Clara's friends and colleagues mingled, their voices a dull roar of condolences. Over coffee, David explained that Clara's will, to be read later that day, left everything. Her estate, her investments, even her art collection, to him. "She changed it a month ago," he said, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't know until the lawyer called." A month ago? Clara hadn't mentioned anything, and we'd spoken weekly, our late-night calls filled with her laughter and my complaints about work. Why would she rewrite her will without telling me? I excused myself, my mind spinning, and locked myself in the bathroom. Unfolding the note again, I traced Clara's handwriting, searching for answers. The words "I'm alive" screamed at me, but the second part, "Don't trust the will," felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. If Clara was alive, where was she? And if she wasn't, who had written this? I needed to find the stranger who'd passed me the note, but the crowd outside was a sea of unfamiliar faces. Back in the hall, I spotted Clara's best friend, Mara, a sharp-eyed journalist who'd always seemed too perceptive for comfort. I pulled her aside, my voice barely a whisper. "Mara, did Clara ever mention changing her will?" Mara's brow furrowed, her gaze flickering to David across the room. "No," she said slowly, "but she was acting strange the last few weeks. Secretive. She kept saying she was working on something big, something she couldn't tell anyone about. Not even you." My heart sank. Clara had always been a whirlwind, chasing adventures and secrets, but shutting me out? That hurt. I showed Mara the note, watching her eyes widen. "This is her handwriting," she whispered. "Lila, what the hell is going on?" I didn't know, but I was determined to find out. The will reading was in an hour, and I had a sinking feeling it would reveal more than Clara's assets. It would unravel her life. As the reception dragged on, I kept my distance from David, watching him work the room with practiced grief. Something about his composure felt rehearsed, like an actor hitting his marks. The note had planted a seed of doubt, and it was growing fast. If Clara was alive, why was David so calm about inheriting everything? And if she wasn't, who stood to gain from this lie? I cornered the lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, before the reading. He was a wiry man with a nervous tic, shuffling papers as if they could shield him from my questions. "Mr. Hargrove, when exactly did Clara change her will?" I asked. He hesitated, his eyes darting to David, who was now watching us. "A month ago, via video call," he said. "She was very specific. Everything to David, nothing to anyone else. My blood ran cold. Clara had always promised to split her estate with me, our parents' old house, her paintings. Why cut me out? The will reading began in a small, stuffy office adjacent to the church. David sat across from me, his hands folded, his face unreadable. Hargrove cleared his throat and began reading. I, Clara Marie Evans, bequeath all my assets to my husband, David Michael Evans. The words blurred as my mind raced. The note, the handwriting, the secrecy. I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was out there, watching, waiting for me to act. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Every eye in the room turned to me, but I didn't care. This isn't right, I said, my voice shaking. Clara wouldn't do this. David's jaw tightened, and Hargrove looked like he wanted to bolt. Lila, please, David said, his tone patronizing. This is hard for all of us. Hard? He had no idea. The note in my pocket felt like a live wire, burning with questions only Clara could answer. I left the room, ignoring David's calls, and headed for the church's quiet garden. The lilies swayed in the breeze, mocking the chaos in my head. If Clara was alive, she'd chosen to hide from me, her own sister. The thought stung, but betrayal was an old friend. Clara had always been the golden child, the one who got away with everything while I cleaned up her messes. But faking her death? That was a new low even for her. Mara found me by the fountain, her face pale. I did some digging, she said, glancing over her shoulder. Clara was investigating something before the accident. She wouldn't tell me what, but she was meeting someone. A man named Victor Klein. The name hit me like a punch. Victor Klein was Clara's old business partner, a shady financier who'd vanished after their startup collapsed. Clara had sworn she'd cut ties with him, but secrets were her currency. Do you think Victor's behind this? I asked, my voice low. Mara shrugged. Maybe, but Lila, there's more. I checked the accident report. The car was registered to David, not Clara, and the police found traces of an accelerant. My breath caught. Arson. If the crash wasn't an accident, then David's grief was a lie, or worse, a cover. I needed to find Victor, and fast. I tracked down Victor's last known address, a rundown apartment on the city's edge. The drive felt endless, my mind replaying Clara's laugh, her teasing voice calling me Little Lila, even though I was only 2 years younger. The note was my only lead, but it raised more questions than answers. Why hadn't Clara come to me directly? Was she hiding from David, from Victor, or from something bigger? The apartment building reeked of mildew and regret. Victor's unit was on the 3rd floor, the door ajar. I pushed it open, my heart pounding, and found chaos. Papers strewn across the floor, a laptop smashed, and a faint smell of smoke. Someone had been here, and they hadn't wanted to be found. I sifted through the mess, finding a photo of Clara and Victor, their smiles forced, dated 2 weeks before the accident. My sister had been lying to me, and it hurt more than I could admit. My phone buzzed. David. Lila, where are you? We need to talk. His voice was too smooth, too controlled. I hung up, my hands shaking. If David was involved, I couldn't trust him. I pocketed the photo and left, my mind racing with possibilities. Clara's death wasn't just a mystery. It was a conspiracy, and I was caught in its web. Back at my apartment, I spread the photo and the note on my kitchen table, staring at them like pieces of a shattered puzzle. Mara had promised to dig deeper into Victor's connections, but I couldn't wait. I called an old friend, Jake, a private investigator who owed me a favor. I need everything you can find on Victor Klein and David Evans, I said. Jake didn't ask questions, he knew better. Give me 24 hours, he replied. That night, I barely slept, haunted by Clara's face and the note's cryptic warning. Dawn, Jake called. Victor's been off the grid, but he's been spotted at a bar downtown, the Red Sparrow. And David? He's been making large transfers to an offshore account. Started a month ago. My stomach churned. The timing matched the will's revision. Was David planning to disappear with Clara's money? Or was he covering up something worse? I headed to the Red Sparrow, a dive bar where the air was thick with cigarette smoke and desperation. Victor's words hung in the air, sharp and cold. I leaned closer, my voice a low growl. I'm not walking away. Tell me where Clara is. He took a long sip of whiskey, his eyes darting to the bar's exit. She's hiding, he said finally. From David. From me. From everyone. My heart raced. Clara was alive. But why hide? And why drag me into this with a cryptic note? Victor leaned back, his voice dropping to a whisper. Clara found something. Financial records, David's records. He's been siphoning money from her accounts for years, funneling it through shell companies. I froze. David, the devoted husband, a thief? It explained the offshore accounts Jake had found, but not the accident or the note. Why fake her death? I asked. Victor's jaw tightened. She didn't trust anyone, not even you. The words cut deep, but I pushed past the pain. Where is she, Victor? He shook his head. I don't know. She contacted me 2 weeks ago, said she was going dark. Then the accident happened. His eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe guilt. I think David staged it to cover his tracks. My mind reeled. If David had tried to kill Clara, the will was just the start. He was tying up loose ends. I left the bar, my head spinning. The note was Clara's cry for help, but it was also a warning. If David was behind the accident, he'd know I was asking questions. I needed proof, something to confront him with. Jake called as I drove home, his voice tense. Lila, I found something. David's been meeting with a guy named Marcus Reed, a known fixer, specializes in accidents. My blood ran cold. A fixer? David wasn't just a thief, he was dangerous. I pulled over, my hands shaking. The note, Victor's story, Jake's intel, it all pointed to David. But Clara's secrecy gnawed at me. Why hadn't she trusted me? We'd grown up sharing everything, from secrets to scars. Her silence felt like a betrayal, but I couldn't let it stop me. I had to find her before David did. At home, I dug through Clara's old emails, ones she'd forwarded me about her art gallery. Hidden in a draft folder was a cryptic message. If anything happens, check the safe deposit box. Keys in the frame. The frame? I thought of the painting in her studio, a vibrant abstract she'd never sold. I drove to her house, slipping past the security system David hadn't bothered to change. The painting hung in her studio, its colors swirling like a storm. I pried open the frame, and a small key fell into my hand. My pulse raced as I headed to the bank, the key burning in my pocket. The safe deposit box held a USB drive and a letter addressed to me. Clara's handwriting again. Lila, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. David's not who you think. The USB has proof. Don't let him win. I plugged the USB into my laptop, my hands trembling. It contained financial records, emails, and photos, David meeting with Marcus Reed, bank statements showing millions moved to offshore accounts. Clara had been building a case against him, but she'd vanished before she could act. The letter ended with a plea. Find me, Lila. I'm scared. Tears stung my eyes. Clara was alive, but she was running, terrified. I called Mara, my voice shaking. I have proof David's dirty, but I need to find Clara. Mara was silent for a moment. There's a cabin upstate. Clara used it for retreats. If she's hiding, she's there. I grabbed my keys, the USB, and the letter. The cabin was a 4-hour drive, and every second felt like a countdown. As I hit the highway, my phone buzzed. David again. Lila, stop digging. You're making things worse. His voice was cold. A stranger's. I hung up, my heart pounding. He knew I was on to him. The road stretched ahead, dark and endless, but I wasn't turning back. Clara was out there, and I'd find her, no matter what it took. The cabin loomed in the moonlight, a shadow against the pine trees. My headlights caught the glint of a shuttered window, and my heart leapt. Clara could be inside. I parked a quarter-mile away, hiding my car in the brush, the USB and letter tucked into my jacket. The note's warning echoed in my mind. Don't trust the will. If David was chasing Clara's fortune, he'd come for her, and now maybe me. The forest was silent, save for the crunch of leaves under my boots. I approached the cabin, my breath shallow, every shadow a threat. The door was unlocked, creaking as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was stale, but a faint scent of Clara's perfume lingered. "Clara?" I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer. I searched the rooms, finding signs of life. A half-eaten sandwich, a rumpled blanket, but no Clara. In the bedroom, I found a notebook, her handwriting scrawled across the pages. It detailed her discovery of David's embezzlement, her fear he'd kill her to keep it quiet. The last entry, dated 3 days ago, read, "I'm leaving tonight. If Lila finds this, I'm sorry. I love you." Tears blurred my vision. She was alive, but she was running again. Why hadn't she waited for me? My phone vibrated, shattering the silence. An unknown number. I answered, my voice barely a whisper. "Lila?" Clara's voice crackled through, faint but unmistakable. "I'm at the old mill 10 miles north. Hurry. He's coming." The call cut off before I could respond. My heart raced. Clara was alive, but David was closing in. I grabbed the notebook and ran, the forest swallowing my footsteps. The old mill was a crumbling relic, its rusted machinery looming like ghosts. I parked and crept closer, my pulse pounding. A figure moved in the shadows, Clara. Her hair was shorter, her face gaunt, but it was her. I ran to her, pulling her into a hug, tears streaming down my face. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. She clung to me, her voice breaking. "I couldn't risk it, Lila. David's dangerous." She explained everything. How she'd uncovered David's scheme, how he'd staged the accident to kill her, how she'd slipped the note to a stranger at the funeral to reach me. "I didn't know who to trust," she said, her eyes haunted. "But I knew you'd fight for me." Before I could respond, headlights cut through the darkness. A car door slammed. "David." We ducked behind a rusted conveyor belt, my heart in my throat. David's voice echoed through the mill. "Clara, I know you're here. Let's end this." His footsteps were deliberate, a predator stalking prey. Clara gripped my hand, her eyes wide with fear. I whispered, "We need a plan." She nodded, pointing to a ladder leading to the mill's upper platform. If we could get there, we might have a chance. We moved silently, the USB and letter heavy in my pocket. The ladder creaked under our weight, but David didn't hear. He was searching the lower level, his flashlight beams slicing through the dark. On the platform, Clara whispered, "The proof on that USB. It's enough to ruin him, but he'll kill us to keep it quiet." I nodded, my mind racing. We needed to get the evidence to the police, but first we had to survive. David's footsteps grew closer, his voice colder. "Lila, you're in this too now. Don't make it harder than it has to be." My stomach churned. He knew I was here, and he wasn't playing games. Clara's hand tightened on mine, her eyes fierce despite her fear. "We can do this," she whispered. "Together." For the first time in years, I felt the bond we'd shared as kids, unbreakable, even in the face of betrayal. The mill's upper platform was a maze of rusted beams and rotting wood, our only advantage the shadows. Clara and I crouched low, her breathing ragged, my heart hammering. David's flashlight beam swept below, his voice now a low growl. "You can't hide forever, Clara. Give me the evidence, and this ends quietly." He was lying, his tone promised violence, not mercy. Clara whispered, "There's a back exit, through the old grain chute. If we can get there, we can make a run for it." I nodded, but the chute was across the platform, past a gaping hole in the floor. One wrong step and we'd fall 2 stories. I clutched the USB, its weight a reminder of what was at stake. If we lost it, David would walk free, and Clara's sacrifice would be for nothing. We crawled forward, the platform creaking under us. David's footsteps paused below. He'd heard something. "Lila," he called, his voice softer now, manipulative. "You don't want to die for her mistakes." I froze, his words slicing through me. Clara's secrets had hurt me, but she was my sister. I'd never abandon her, not now. Clara's eyes met mine, pleading. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. I nodded, steeling myself. We reached the chute, a narrow metal slide caked with dust. Clara went first, her movements silent but swift. I followed, the metal cold against my hands. Halfway down, a board snapped above us. David was on the platform. "I see you," he shouted, his voice echoing. We hit the ground running, the forest a blur around us. My car was hidden nearby, but David's was closer. His footsteps crashed through the underbrush, gaining on us. Clara stumbled, her ankle twisting, and I hauled her up, my arm around her waist. "Keep going," I gasped, my lungs burning. The car was in sight, but so was David, his silhouette looming in the moonlight. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking as Clara climbed into the passenger seat. David was yards away, a glint of metal in his hand, a gun. My heart stopped, but I slammed the door and floored the gas, tires screeching as we tore down the dirt road. Shots rang out, one grazing the rear window, but we didn't stop. Clara clutched my arm, her voice trembling. "He won't let us go." I drove blindly, the USB and letter still in my pocket. "We need to get to the police," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Clara nodded, but her eyes were haunted. "He's got connections, Lila. The police might not be enough." She was right. David's money gave him power, and we were running out of time. We reached a small-town police station at dawn, the building quiet except for a sleepy desk sergeant. I handed over the USB and letter, explaining everything. The note, the accident, David's crimes. The sergeant's eyes widened as he scanned the evidence, but his hesitation worried me. "This is big," he said. "We'll need to call in the feds." Clara's face paled. If David's reach extended to law enforcement, we weren't safe here. As we waited, a black SUV pulled up outside, its tinted windows hiding the driver. My stomach dropped. "Clara, we need to move," I whispered. She nodded, grabbing my hand. We slipped out the back, the sergeant too distracted to notice. The forest behind the station was dense, a temporary shield, but David was relentless. We needed a plan, and we needed it now. Clara's voice was fierce despite her fear. "There's a reporter, Emily Voss, at the city paper. She's clean, and she hates corruption. If we get the evidence to her, David's finished." It was a long shot, but it was all we had. We trekked through the forest, my phone's GPS guiding us toward the highway. Every rustle made my heart race, but Clara's presence kept me grounded. We were sisters, fighting together, and that was enough, for now. The forest thinned as we reached the highway, dawn breaking in streaks of gold. Clara leaned against me, her ankle swollen, her face etched with exhaustion. We'd escaped David, for now, but the USB in my pocket felt like a ticking bomb. Emily Voss was our last hope, but the city was hours away, and David's SUV could be anywhere. A trucker stopped for us, his rig a lifeline. "You ladies okay?" he asked, eyeing Clara's limp. I forced a smile. "Just need a ride to the city." He didn't ask questions, and we climbed in, the hum of the engine drowning out my racing thoughts. Clara whispered, "If we get to Emily, she'll blow this wide open. David won't have anywhere to hide." The drive gave us time to talk, really talk, for the first time in years. Clara confessed how David's charm had blinded her, how she'd ignored the red flags, late-night calls, unexplained trips, until she found the financial records. "I was going to leave him," she said, tears in her eyes. "But he found out I knew." Her voice broke, and I squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore," I said, meaning it. We reached the city by noon, the trucker dropping us near the newspaper's office. Emily Voss was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I handed her the USB and letter, recounting everything. The note, the accident, David's fixer. Her brow furrowed as she scanned the files. "This is explosive," she said. "But David Evans has friends in high places. We need to move fast." Emily promised to publish the story within hours, but we couldn't stay. David would know we'd come here. Clara and I checked into a cheap motel using cash to avoid a trail. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. I answered, my heart pounding. "Lila." David's voice was ice. "You're making a mistake. Give me the evidence, and I'll let you both live." I hung up, my hands shaking. He was close, too close. Clara's eyes were fierce. "We can't let him win, Lila." I nodded, but fear gnawed at me. Emily's story would expose David, but it might not stop him. We needed protection, someone we could trust. I called Jake, my PI friend, begging him to meet us. "I'm on my way," he said. "Stay hidden." Jake arrived an hour later, his face grim. "David's got people watching the city. Cops, private security, you name it." He handed us burner phones and fake IDs. "Use these. I've got a safe house upstate." Clara hesitated, her eyes searching mine. "Can we trust him?" she whispered. I nodded. Jake had never let me down, but doubt lingered. David's reach was long, and we were running out of allies. At the safe house, a small cabin tucked in the hills, we watched Emily's story break online. "Millionaire's dark secret. Embezzlement and attempted murder," the headline screamed. The article detailed David's crimes, backed by the USB's evidence. Social media erupted, and David's carefully crafted image crumbled. But victory felt hollow. David was still out there, and he wasn't the type to go quietly. That night, Clara and I sat by the fire, the weight of the past week crushing us. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," she said, her voice small. "I thought I was protecting you." I hugged her, tears falling. "We're in this together now," I said. But as we planned our next move, headlights pierced the darkness outside. My heart stopped. Jake was upstairs, but the car wasn't his. David had found us. The headlights cut through the cabin's windows, pinning us like prey. Clara grabbed my hand, her eyes wide with terror. "It's him," she whispered. I nodded, my throat tight, and pulled her toward the back door. Jake's footsteps thundered downstairs, his voice sharp. "Get out now." But the front door splintered before we could move, and David stepped inside, gun in hand, his face a mask of rage. "Lila, Clara," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You've caused me a lot of trouble." Jake raised his own gun, stepping between us. "Drop it, Evans," he growled. For a moment, the room was a tableau of tension, every second stretching into eternity. Then David laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You think a story will stop me? I own this city." Clara's voice cut through the silence, steady despite her fear. "Not anymore, David. The world knows what you did." His eyes narrowed, and I saw the moment he decided to end it. He raised his gun, but Jake was faster, tackling him to the floor. The shot went wide, shattering a window. Clara and I ran, the forest swallowing us as gunfire echoed behind. We stumbled through the trees, branches clawing at our skin. Clara's ankle slowed her, but she pushed on, her determination fierce. "We can't let him win," she gasped. I nodded, my mind racing. The safe house was compromised, but Emily's story had shifted the tide. If we could survive the night, David's empire would collapse. Sirens wailed in the distance, a beacon of hope. Jake had called for backup before confronting David. We reached a clearing, the lights of a police chopper circling above. Clara collapsed, tears streaming down her face. "We did it, Lila," she whispered. I held her, my own tears falling. We'd fought for each other, and we'd won. The police found us minutes later, their flashlights cutting through the dark. David was in custody, Jake wounded but alive. The USB's evidence, combined with Emily's story, was enough to charge him with embezzlement, attempted murder, and arson. Clara's testimony sealed his fate, her voice unwavering as she recounted his betrayal. In the weeks that followed, Clara and I rebuilt our bond, piece by painful piece. The will was declared fraudulent, and Clara's estate was restored to her. She sold the gallery, using the money to start a foundation for victims of financial fraud. I stood by her, prouder than I'd ever been. The note that started it all, slipped to me at her funeral, became a symbol of our resilience, a reminder that family, even when broken, could heal. One evening, as we sat on her porch, Clara took my hand. "I never stopped trusting you, Lila," she said. "I just didn't trust myself." I smiled, the weight of her secrets lifting at last. We'd faced death, betrayal, and lies, but we'd come through. Sisters, survivors, stronger together. The world moved on, but Clara's note, her cry for help, would always remind me. Love endures, even when trust falters.